In the past couple of months or so, I've made what I now call Indie Binge a regular pastime activity of mine. Basically what I do is, on a work-free day, I take a couple of hours and dedicate them to skimming through this vast ocean of indie games out there. And I do this with a super loose mindset, meaning as soon as a title just remotely piques my curiosity, I don't think about it for too much, I just download it straight away and give it a shot. But I also limit myself to about 30 to 45 minutes at max per game. And this turned out to be a great way to widen the horizons a little bit, especially when I found myself stuck in
advanced video game ennui.
You know, this perpetual state of ever so slight dissatisfaction with all the video game noise out there, when it feels like you're spending more time browsing through e-stores than actually playing games. And Indie Binge has really helped me break out of that. Of course, if you're not a billionaire, then this only works with games that are either super affordable or, even better, completely free of charge. And itch.io has turned out to be a tremendous platform for that, because indie developers can host games on their own terms there. And I just keep finding an incredible amount of amazing, overlooked titles, a lot of them short and compressed, but first and foremost, really interesting experiences, of which most of them are completely free of charge.
Sometimes things that are expensive are worse.
So yeah, try out Indie Binge. You'll be surprised. It's going to be a great time. Which is also why I'm really happy that the first episode of Games from Underground was received so well, really. Because that means I can do this on a regular basis now, and share my exploits with you. You've just turned another hobby into a professional responsibility. Great job. But yeah, seriously, this is a great thing, because I've already tallied up so many more fantastic indie titles than I could ever share with the capacity of my channel. And also, and this is also one of the main goals of this series, I get to help out small indie game creators in the process a little bit. So everybody wins. Now, since the last episode, we were focusing on horror, eldritch, gothic, spooky, scary stuff, this time we're gonna wind down a little bit. I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is and give you a list of games from Underground that are all completely non-violent. And each of these games I also personally consider to be tremendously relaxing, but each game for their very own reason. They're all titles that I would boot up in a heartbeat on a stressful and anxious day where all I need is just a chill session of mental R&R. One of my personal favorite aspects about cyberpunk is that despite the setting being openly dystopian and disheartening to every inhabitant of these worlds that lives below a ridiculously high power threshold, the naive dreamer in me has always felt drawn to its neon future cityscapes like a moth to a flame.
A new life awaits you in the off-world colony. The chance to begin again in a golden land of opportunity and adventure.
Diary of a Spaceport Janitor is a game that's built around this exact dichotomy. This absurd desire to inhabit a sensory-overwhelming, depressing, and alienating neon future metropolis in outer space, and rendered in beautifully lush 3D pixel art. In essence, this game is exactly what it says on the tin. You're a janitor who roams a vast, sprawling spaceport metropolis and picks up and burns trash to keep the streets as clean as the daily battery life of your incinerator allows you to. Each morning, you get paid for the amount of trash you've burned the previous day, and with that meager income, you deal with the game's rudimentary survival mechanics to the best of your abilities. But Diaries of a Spaceport Janitor is so much more than a simple survival game. The first time I played this game, I felt myself rather quickly thrown off. The spaceport, at first glance mesmerizing and beautiful, rendered in this charming, lush pixel art within 3D environments style, can be surprisingly abrasive to a new player. The place is littered with hundreds of confusing stores, shops, market stalls, and street vendors who sell and buy an overwhelming abundance of overpriced and seemingly nonsensical items. You get hungry several times a day, and the food is as well incredibly expensive. And since you have no clue what any of those dishes offered actually are or contain, can you tell me what Zenkrijan sugar-sweet buns are made of? Or what still wiggling xerine clay worms do to your metabolism? And by the way, no offense, I hope I didn't butcher any of those names because I'm not a very good Zenkrijan speaker. But chances are high that you end up eating something that's food for a completely different race or species, but that's pure poison for you, and you end up vomiting all over the place. But hey, if you incinerate the vomit, that's at least a little boost for tomorrow's paycheck. But even if you get a little money, when you don't watch out, you randomly get mugged by the city's official privately owned police force. And to add insult to injury, after my first day, when my protagonist got tired and the battery of the trash incinerator was empty, meaning I couldn't work anymore until I got back home, the game strongly nudged me to do this, to get back home and get some rest. But I realized that, there's not even a map. So I quickly got completely lost in the confounding maze of the Spaceport city and meandered around cluelessly in growing panic and confusion, hungry, tired, and disoriented. Diaries of a Spaceport Janitor really is a game that defies expectations, knowingly. On your first day, it leads you to discover that below the city, there's a system of underground sewer dungeons, supposedly ripe with treasure. Might your luck have finally changed? Can you finally break out from the life as an underpaid and underappreciated janitor? But the little trip ends up with you catching an ancient curse. You stumble across an old altar, pass out, and wake up in your apartment, and you realize that there's now a floating skull following you around at all times that just shouts in your face for no apparent reason. And that's really your first big quest in the game. Try to get rid of your new unwanted companion. You seek out a scholar who tells you that you have to find 3 parts of an ancient tablet that contains instructions on how to break this curse. Ominous. But fulfilling these tasks turns out to be incredibly grindy. The items you're looking for require a lot of collecting and gathering and feel almost too daunting to be even worth the hassle. It requires patience, dedication, and first and foremost, asceticism. Don't spend too much or you'll end up broke and hungry again. And ever since you got the curse, your body has regularly started feeling weird, disjointed. You feel uncomfortable in your own shell. And it turns out that your only way around this is to seek out one of the gender kiosks and gender shift to make you feel awesome again. Diaries of a Spaceport Janitor is one big fat allegory on being young, broke, queer, and disenfranchised. A riff on the soul-crushing alienation of living in a hyper-consumerist society where you, as an individual, are meaningless and expendable. A world that's designed to keep you down and milk you dry while you're struggling to just get by. See, all these tasks, these quests the game gives you to give you a sense of direction and a goal to work forward to, they're in reality nothing but carrots on a stick. When I gave the game a second try, I actually did begin to get a better sense of the city. Yeah, I even eventually managed to reliably find my way back home in the evening. Great start. I also started getting a feeling for what litter is trash, almost everything really, and which of the items you collect can actually be sold to which vendors. I learned to avoid the crooked cops, so I got a hang of which vending machines and cooks sell the most affordable and digestible food that doesn't make my janitor throw up all the time. Things were starting to lighten up. And so I went for those grindy, gamey fetch quests that are meant to fuel the hope of ever leaving this hamster wheel, leaving this planet for good and making a future for yourself. That's what you do in games, right? And man, it ended up in one of the weirdest grind sessions I've had in a game in a long time. See, the repetitive action of grinding is something that can be very relaxing if it's approached with the right mindset and implemented in a fair way by a game. And this game has such a strange flow once it clicks that it really lulled me into its routine. I just kept going and going like a good Sanadrone is expected to. But after a good 7 hours in one session, I left the game with my brain positively feeling like scrambled eggs. And it also felt like I hadn't even gotten that much closer to my actual goal, despite it constantly feeling like I was accomplishing stuff. And every time I finished something big, I got hit with the next mammoth task. The carrot dangling tantalizingly close in front of my face, but just out of reach, all the time. I started wondering, how much do you really know about this place? You still have virtually no clue about the thousands of items and products you can find, know pretty much nothing about the multitude of alien races living here. You're practically in the dark about these gods that are worshipped everywhere, what this curse of yours is about, and why you keep feeling abject in your own body. You know nothing about the food you put in your body, the politics that govern this place, and what actually is gender shifting. And why do I even need this? It's highly unlikely that this world you live in will ever lift a finger to help you understand your dysphoria, but the market sure sees the opportunity to capitalize on it by offering you expensive products to consume that you have to spend your meager income on. And with that, suddenly everything fell into place. This is all just bullshit. It's facade. It's a mere pipe dream. The game isn't even subtle about this. It blatantly tells you right in the beginning that you should stop thinking too much about it and trying to win. You're just a lowly Sanadrone. That's all you're ever gonna be. And that was the moment where it loudly clicked for me. Because from that point on, I kept coming back to just be what it says on the tin, a spaceport janitor. You just have to imagine the janitor happy, rolling the boulder of trash through the spaceport day in, day out, rinse and repeat. Not rejecting, but finding comfort in the routine. Accepting the curse and owning it. Diaries of a Spaceport Janitor puts your video game conditioning to the test. Because it wants you to shed your internalized, goal-oriented mindset and just let loose. For me, this shift in perspective turned this game from a frustrating, stressful, and confusing existentialist fight for survival into one of the most relaxing, peaceful, and almost zen-like experiences I now regularly seek out on a stressful day to just have a jolly good time and wind down as an unimportant citizen of a vast cyberpunk spaceport metropolis. There's something almost spiritual to this, isn't it?
Hello, everyone.
How in an art imitates life way, accepting your role in this cutesy little indie title as exactly what the game wants you to be, might even, ever so slightly, end up easing a little bit of that constant real-life existential pressure of living in an alienating, hyper-consumerist society.
Quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it? That's what it is to be a slave.
Diaries of a Spaceport Janitor is available on itch.io, Humble Store, and on Steam at the time of this video's release for around $10. The next game I've picked for today's video is in many ways a totally different experience than Spaceport Janitor, but those two games share one common theme. The uneventful, simple, everyday life of a wage slave. Routine feed, and by that I mean feed with EA and not the plural of foot because it's not a game by Quentin Tarantino. It's a highly atmospheric daily life and work routine sandbox that can range from depressing and hopeless to soothing, peaceful, and thought-provoking. But where the last game did this in the outer rim of space, this one stays back here on Earth. To be precise, in a melancholic, utopian aesthetic of Eastern Bloc housing architecture. Routine Feed is one of those games where you actually don't do that much. That's if you don't find your own incentive, your own reason to be in here. Because if not, then you might find this suburban sandbox to be a bit dull. But that's not by accident. There's a point to all this. You wake up every morning in your one-bedroom apartment, you step out on the balcony, have a smoke, or rather pretend to have a smoke, while taking in the dawning suburban scenery. Take your medications, go into the kitchen, listen to the radio maybe while looking out the window. Maybe wash the dishes you left from yesterday's dinner. Then grab an apple and get ready to go to work. Turn off the lights, leave your apartment, and walk down the slightly untidy stairwell. Might as well toss some of the litter down the chute while you're here. You leave the apartment complex and make your way across the courtyard and head towards the bus stop until your ride arrives and hop on to drive to work. And at your workplace, you spend your entire day slaving away on a computer with an old monochromatic CRT screen doing meaningless bureaucratic chores until evenfall. Then you punch the clock and ride back home. And once you're back in the evening hours, what's there to do? Maybe watch some telly,
Игра помогает лучше владеть иностранным языком.
Or grab something to read from your shelf that's filled with countless magazines and books.
J'ai su découvrir la sérénité dans le triste fond des plus tristes choses et me rapprocher de la vérité assez près pour voir les faits et les causes.
Or, and that's the ultimate MacGuffin in this game, pull out your typewriter and finally start working on that long dreamed of passion project of yours. Hammer away at the keyboard and write that manuscript you've been dreaming of for so long to one day complete and send it to a publisher. There we have it again, this carrot on a stick, this pipe dream of eventually breaking out of the hamster wheel, something to work towards, to give meaning to your lonely, unfulfilled existence. Routine Feed really isn't subtle about feelings of loneliness, alienation and disillusion, social isolation, depression. You're in this vast apartment complex full of traces of life everywhere, but not a single soul to say hello to welcome you, or to even just acknowledge you being there with a passing nod or a smile. And all the books and magazines you can grab and read, as well as the pages written by you, the protagonist, meandering through this melancholy diorama of a summer emotion, they all have the tendency to sound not just contemplative, but desolate, sad, and deeply dispiriting. But Routine Feed is not just about sadness and hopelessness, but about the complementary nature of loneliness and solitude. One being the sorrowful sensation of feeling unwanted, unloved, and superfluous, while the other is the calming, healing quality of remote contemplation and self-reflection. This eclectic scenery of Eastern Bloc housing architecture is modeled and rendered with so much playfulness and attention to detail that you'll find fun stuff to play around with and dazzlingly pretty vistas exerting an air of repose and that make you want to stop, sit down, and just take it in slowly every step of the way. And for some reason, I just kept ignoring that carrot dangling in front of me and started role-playing my day-to-day routine and just futzed around aimlessly and without a care in the world. As I said, Routine Feed is a game where you have to search your own gameplay, but when you find it, it's kind of mesmerizing. Like, I don't want to know how much time I've just spent messing around in a little kitchen, cutting bread and cheese and vegetables and washing dishes and making fried egg in the oven and sometimes just pretending to actually make nice supper after a long, hard day of work in the office.
For today we make classic Russian dish is Buterbrod. For this you not many things need. Bread, butter, big stick of колбаса or sausage, one big knife, and also essential part. Big block of cheese. The more Slav the better. Use knife on cheese, make slices very good. The колбаса, very most important part. No need for to make thin slice. Sausage goes on top and there you go. It's done. Classic Buterbrod. Enjoy.
Am I making a good case for this game? I really don't know. I'm not even sure I'm trying to. It feels more like I'm bouncing off my contemplations and feelings in video form than offering a comprehensive review of it. This is not a consumer-oriented buying guide, and why would it? Routine Feed is completely free on itch.io anyway. But I want to get this sense across that this sandbox is more than it seems at first glance. That it was not just a relaxing, but also a very introspective experience. And this is really hard to put into words why it had this effect. It's a really short, interactive sandbox experience that I stuck with for many more hours than it takes to finish the quote-unquote main quest. That's finishing your manuscript and awkwardly carrying it down to a postbox and sending it to a publisher in the hopes of making it big and leaving the old dreaded wheel of pain through accomplishment and self-actualization. I'm not going to spoil what you could call the ending of the game, meaning what happens when you send it away, but I'm going to say that it's perfectly in line with this dichotomy that I've been going on about, not just with this game. It felt almost cynical to me, but that's really up to interpretation. Routine Feed blatantly highlights the dissatisfaction and alienation of an unfulfilled work life. But you can choose to accept your fate and step past it to focus on the many beautiful things around you that make life worthy and inspiring instead. The first noble truth of Buddhism, dukkha, states that pain is universal and unavoidable. And when we embrace this truth of life with mindfulness, we come to realize that sadness is depth, while happiness is height. Happiness is a tree growing into the sky, while sadness is its roots reaching deep down into the womb of the earth. Both are needed, and the higher the tree grows, the deeper it goes simultaneously. The bigger the tree, the bigger will be its roots. It's all about the balance.
It's just a matter of how you look at it, that's all. So don't worry, okay? Good.
But speaking of Buddhism, and yes, I am very proud of that not at all shoehorn transition, the word bardo in some schools of Buddhism describes an intermediate state between a person's death and rebirth. Metaphorically, it's often used to describe liminal spaces, the time and space between the what was and the what's to come. And what could better symbolize such a state of transition than a taxi ride in Tokyo City at 4 a.m. in the morning? In Bird of Passage by the developer Space Backyard, you take on the role of a cab passenger, aimlessly driving through the rain-soaked, neon-lit, nighttime streets of modern-day Tokyo. Your one and only interaction in this visual novel-like narrative experience is chatting with your drivers, who are bound by their profession to engage in polite conversation for the snapshot in time of your passage. That's if you didn't end up in a silent taxi. But why are you riding cab after cab through the night? Who are you? Where do you come from? Where are you going? And why do you seem to be stuck in this limbo, apparently unable to do anything else but hop from taxi to taxi and just talk? Ask the right questions and listen closely, since piecing this puzzle, your own identity and your destination together is what you're here for, and what your drivers are here for, since they are your walls to bounce off your contemplations. Bird of Passage is one of those games that fits the description of an interactive poem in video game form. The glossy and glittering urban nighttime scenery is minimalistic, hypnotizing, and gloomily relaxing. It's an interactive neon noir haiku in which you're the glimmering dot jumping from syllable to syllable. And despite the game having a clearly defined goal, like literally finding your goal, it's an experience that's all about the journey of introspection itself. So soak it in, this oniric diorama, and let the droning melancholy of the synthesizers and raindrops enthrall you. Its confusing surreality is mesmerizing and beautiful, like the realization that, and that's as spoilery as I'm gonna get, this game, that appears like a perpetually looping visual novel, is actually a conversational puzzle at heart. I've always loved games where understanding the narrative is the core engagement, and Bird of Passage is a forgotten soul's journey from an uncertain past to an unknown future in the liminal space of a taxi ride. A Lynchian ghost story about the search for the meaning of the in-between. So hop right in. The taximeter is turned off for the ride since Bird of Passage is available completely free of charge on itch.io.
It's good. It's good to go. It's good. Good to go.
Yeah, man. Just chill, all right?
After so much alienation, contemplation, and melancholy, let's end this video on a lighthearted note. The next game is a weird one, and I say this with a deep fondness in my heart. You know, it's often said that the best comedy doesn't punch down, but upwards, and while I definitely agree with that sentiment, I think the most genius form of comedy makes you laugh and smile and have a good time without punching at all, because there's already enough horribleness in the world, isn't there?
So there's this little island out there where Martin the Sloth is king. He kind of made himself king because he figured that since he's the only one living there, he'd logically be entitled to be king. So, well, during his solitary reign, one day he starts hearing spooky noises. So after doing a bit of research, he finds out that ghosts are supposedly invisible. And since he hasn't even seen a single ghost yet, that's perfect proof that it actually must be a ghost that's haunting the island, right? So Martin hires a group of ghost scientists to get to the bottom of these ominous hauntings. But even after 2 full weeks of clueless probing, even this team of specialists isn't able to catch the slightest glimpse of the spectral happenings. This is, of course, a case for the greatest investigator of all time. Sadly though, Lobster Cop isn't available, so the supervisor calls you, the frog detective, instead, to take on the bone-chillingly spooky case of the Haunted Island. If I would have to coin the genre of the Haunted Island, a frog detective game, the best thing I can come up with is an anti-detective adventure game. Since the term doesn't really say that much, so it's nicely vague, but also because the game draws much of its unique appeal and charm from, subverting the expectations of its genre. The detective mystery is a genre laden with preformed expectations and stereotypes. No matter if you read Agatha Christie or Arthur Conan Doyle stories, or if you look at modern stuff, even in games like LA Noire, it's typically all conveyed in a dark, moody, noir tone. Gloomy, stoic protagonists who smoke too much on the hunt for clues to uncover a sinister plot of treachery and backstabbery. And yet, in Haunted Island, you technically are a detective who technically does take on a case that you technically have to solve, but you quickly realize that this game is a full-on parody on the detective genre that flips its key characteristics and preconceptions on its head for comedic purposes. While, for instance, camera angles and dialogues are recreated from film noir, and the music feels like it's directly lifted from a classic Inspector Poirot film.
Poirot.
How's that?
Poirot.
Oh, Perot, right.
Or other parts seem like a blatant homage to Twin Peaks, you quickly realize that there are not many actual clues to find and that it's not really a riveting mystery you're uncovering here. More like a riveting mystery. You get it? You mostly just grab items you find laying around, talk to the quirky characters and find out what they want and try to organize those things for them, to get other items from them that you then can use in other places. Really the most simple adventure mechanics. And the frog detective's most important, unimportant tool of the trade is the best example for the humor the game draws from its genre, the trusty magnifying glass. I mean, every good detective needs a magnifying glass, right? So while you move around the colorful and zany, low-poly, cel-shading island in first person, you can always hold your cool detective instrument right in front of your face and inspect your surroundings for clues. Doing detective's work here. Aha. Elementary. Haunted Island doesn't take itself seriously at all. It's incredibly lighthearted and gentle, and it works best when you accept that it wants you to approach it with that exact mindset. Just relax and have a good time, talk to some friendly people and help them out with their predicaments, and after all is said and done, have a lovely dance-off. That's the vibe, really. And the characters, even though many of them can be boiled down to mostly one central characteristic, despite that they don't feel one-dimensional at all, but sometimes surprisingly relatable, especially considering how short the game actually is. A super casual, wholesome, and relaxing experience that made me audibly laugh more than once and pretty much smile and chuckle my way through it. And one thing that really makes it for me is the writing. It's this type of, well, not just the dialogue, but holistic game writing in general that feels very stream of consciousness, like casual conversations dropped without much thought. But if you look closer, you realize that actually a lot of thought went into it. And one thing, especially in the age of social media with video games, that's often overlooked in my experience is how gifable or screenshotable a game is. Like how many moments of the game, especially in dialogues, you can just capture and share without any context, and it completely works as a self-contained joke on its own. Memeability, so to say. So the game is short, know that, and if you expect a full-on detective game where you solve a deep-running film noir mystery with intrigue and multi-layered plot twists, you're gonna be disappointed. Haunted Island is, for lack of a better word, an anti-detective game. One that made me pretty much instantly fond of all the characters I came across. I'm personally a big fan of Orbit the Anxious Mallard, and also Noodle, the sheep that finds wool absolutely disgusting. I mean, honestly, how would you feel if you find out that people started wearing clothes made of your body hair? And I'm super glad to hear that the team is actually working on a sequel. And if they keep going with sequels, I'm excited for the day in approximately a decade or so when the Frog Detective narrative universe will have grown into the most successful and popular franchise in video game history. It's definitely gonna happen. The Haunted Island, a Frog Detective game, at the time of this video's launch, is available on itch.io and Steam for roughly $5.
There's no doubt about it in my mind. Or perhaps I should say in my imagination, for that's where crimes are conceived and where they're solved. In the imagination.
Alright, so 2 of the games that I showed you today are completely free of charge over on itch.io, and I hope that this gives you a little bit of an incentive to start your own indie binge. I mean, maybe you've done something like that in the past yourself, but try it out, it's gonna be a good time. Just make sure that you are not too critical with what you play. Browse through the store, see what's, free of charge, and if something just remotely piques your curiosity, just click on download and play it in the next few minutes. But limit yourself to these 30-40 minutes. Set a timer if you have to, and even if you're interested, just wait until the next save point, go out, go over to the next game. And you'll see there's gonna be games that stick with you, that you kind of feel drawn back to the next day or in a few days, especially if you cut yourself off like that. All of these 4 games had this effect on me. I played a little bit, I cut myself off, and I wanted to get back to them in a day or 2. Now, one last thing, if you get games on itch.io that are completely free, it gives you the option to name your own price, namely like leaving a little tip to the developers. And I'd like you to consider doing that. You don't have to, of course, it's free, but leaving a little tip often goes a long way. So yeah, just consider supporting small indie creators a little bit with that. And with that, I want to switch back to the Spaceport City because I hear that the bi-weekly lottery announcement is coming up, and I wish all of you good luck.
A new life awaits you in the Red Star Municipal Colonies. Gather round, citizens, for once every week. Municipal lottery offers you the chance to begin a golden land of opportunity and adventure. Today's lucky winners of the Red Star Municipal Lottery: Vincent Kavanaugh, Murad Sardes, Lawrence E. Hewlin, Andrew Hines, Wagon, John Foster, Kevin A. Yannick, Hera Cliff, Noah Gerard Munner, Jim Hansen, Gabriel Garcia, Aaron Tickford, Malin, Agustin Montoya, Leon Mullet, Casper Long, Ken Ward, a.k.a. Legolas Devon, Pablo Marcellus, Leonard Blackula, Sven Bishop, Billy Ross, John Taylor, Hunter Crawford, Margaret Strong, A. Norman Smith, Mortimer Alternators, Terry Collins, Human Stocko, Al Nurse, M. K. Join the Red Star Municipal Lottery for only final